want to squat 700 plus pounds, or at least double your body weight. Well, today we're going to go over the powerlifting squat, and we're going to master our technique all the way from our feet to our head. Let's get started. All right, first things first, what is a squat? A squat, relatively speaking, our torso is not going to change during the movement much at all. Our hips are going to be able to drop below our knees, and our knees are going to travel forward a bit during our squat for most people. Now a hinge, something like a deadlift, is a bit different. We're going to get more of a torso change, and our hips are going to go back much more. Knees are not going to travel much forward. So if you're squatting and it looks like you're folding over like a pancake, we have a problem. We need to remain more upright. Now we're going to break down the squat, starting with our feet all the way up to our head. As far as the feet go, I know I'm not the best artist, but I want you to imagine this being the heel, this being the big toe, this being the little toe. We want almost a tripod effect with a catch, right? In order to have the most amount of balance, we need to have the most amount of foot contact to the ground with a tripod. The heel, the first metatarsal, like your big toe, and the last metatarsal, like your pinky toe. Looks like that, like a triangle. The other thing though, is that we don't only have those 3 points of contact, we also have a point of contact with our midfoot, okay? So you'll see a lot of people, when they're squatting, they try to turn out their foot too much and they start to ride the edge of their foot. It's no good. We need to think about putting pressure through the middle of the foot too in order to get the most stability in our squat. All right, you animals, I know you like taking a look at my feet.
What did he say?
But let's try to focus on powerlifting here. Now, with the feet and the foot pressure, I'm going to be focusing on pushing my big toe down, my pinky toe down, and my heel down in the ground. If I focus on that tripod, I will also get that midpoint or midfoot pressure as well. Now, along with the feet, while we're here, let's take a look at these knees. If my foot is in good proper position and I hold proper stability and force into that tripod and midfoot, my knees are going to travel in line with my toes, right and down the middle of my foot. Is it okay for my knees to go over my toes, over my feet? Absolutely. But it is not okay for my knees to overly pronate in or overly rotate out, okay? Now, sometimes you'll see some lifters pronate in a little bit. Now, my knees though are relatively speaking in line with my feet. We're good to go. But if my feet are out wide like that and my knees are in like this, I'm going to be losing that toe pressure and it's going to be a no-go. Now that we got the feet and the knees done, let's focus on the hips. All right, our feet are nice and stable because we're focusing on that tripod and pressure through the midfoot. Our knees are nice and healthy because our knees are tracking in line with our toes. The next big thing we need to focus on is our hips. When we're squatting, we either want to break at the hips first or break at the hips and the knees at the same time. Too often do I see lifters breaking at the knees first. Two things comes with breaking at the knees. Either one, a lot of lifters who have knee problems tend to break at the knees first because you're loading all that weight into the knees right away instead of the stronger hips. Or two, they tend to have a hard time reaching depth because they're trying to overcompensate their range of motion squatting down by keep on bringing their knees more forward and forward. Instead of dividing that range of motion, instead of just bringing the knees forward all the way, use a little bit more hips. Now, because of the tendonitis in my knee, I'm a bit more of a hip-dominant squatter. What does that mean? When I'm squatting, I want to think about sitting back to a chair that I don't know where it is, right? So if I were to think about a chair behind me, I don't really know where it is, or I'm taking a crap in the woods, I'm going to bring my butt back first, right? As I go down into that squat. Now, a lot of lifters will have a hard time being able to think about this while they squat. So one thing you'll see a lot of lifters do is they pre-hinge, they bring the hips back, hold there, and then go down into the squat. That's great for first-time lifters, that's great for beginners, but over time, we want to break at the hips and the knees first so the bar moves in one straight path down and up. The next big thing we're going to talk about is our torso angle and what we're doing with our torso. What I like to tell my lifters is that our torso is like a steel beam. We want it to be in as straight as a line as possible. Now there's going to be some movement. There could be a little rounding in the back, a little bit of extension in the upper chest. A little bit is okay. Over time though, we're looking for that to be completely neutral. So when you squat, a lot of times you'll see lifters, what they tend to do is they bring their chest up. We don't want to do that because that overarches our lower back, and then as we squat down, we hit a certain range of motion where we can't squat down any more because we're already through extension at our hip. So what is better than this is to focus on a proper brace of breathing into your belly, filling that up like a balloon, squeezing like someone's gonna hit you, and keeping my ribs on top and stacked on top of my pelvis throughout the entire lift. This way I'll get greater range of motion and be nice and stable. So what do I mean by that? As you can see here, I have two little diagrams. This is going to represent your torso, this is going to represent your pelvis. Now, when we're squatting, we want to keep this relatively in line or parallel. A good cue to think about is tucking your ribs in as you squat. It doesn't mean we're not going to get a good brace around the core, represented here, but we need to make sure we're stacked above. We'll actually lose our brace if we think about bringing our chest up. Because what happens when we bring our chest up? It takes our pelvis into a greater anterior pelvic tilt, or our pelvis tilting forward just like that. Now, everyone has some degree of this, that's okay, but when we exasperate it by bringing our chest up, it's gonna limit how far down I can squat and probably bring more up lower back tension, something we wanna avoid. Now we're gonna talk about bar positioning during the squat, more specifically a powerlifting squat. You're gonna see a large variety of bar positions for each lifter, and you have to come up with what you think is gonna be the most comfortable. Now a lot of lifters though, it's going to be a moderate low bar squat. What does that look like? Obviously, when I'm squatting, I want to be facing this way and walking backwards. But to show the camera here, I'm going to go under the bar. I'm going to position the bar right on the spine of my scapula, right there. There's your upper trap. Then you're going to feel a bone. That's called the spine of your scap. You want to bring your shoulders together and down, and it'll create a nice little shelf. For the low bar squat, that's where you want to put it. A low bar squat will allow you to sit a little bit more back and allow you to use a little bit more glutes and reduce the range of motion to just below parallel. It's going to allow you to squat a little bit heavier weights for most people. Some people prefer a very high bar squat where the bar is sitting on top of their traps. You don't want the bar sitting on the vertebrae, onto the bones of your neck. But with a high bar squat, you can have a little bit more on top of your traps. That's completely fine. That tends to allow a lifter to get a little bit more range of motion and be a little bit more upright with the torso. Again, it's fine movement, but a lot of times for powerlifting, we want to go to that low bar squat. The other thing you're going to see is a lot of lifters go very, very low, especially lightweight lifters. Something I might not even be able to do here, where they go below the spine of the scap and more onto the rear delt or lower. If you can do it, that's fine. But oftentimes I see a lot of people develop elbow and wrist issues with that movement. So again, it comes down to your personal preference. The biggest thing with setting the bar on your back is that you're able to create a nice and stable surface. Just like creating a stable core and stable feet and stable knees, when we're squatting, we are trying to create as much stability as possible so when we go into that squat, we can just worry about producing force and not worry about our balance. All right, grip width and head positioning. Now, our grip width on the bar is going to be determined by how tight my shoulders are and how tight I can get my upper back during the lift, right? Some lifters, especially the big boys, they'll have to put their arms way outside to the edge of the collar in order to be able to get under the bar. That's because their shoulders or upper back are already so tight that one, they can't bring their hands in any closer, and two, that's already tight enough for their upper back. Some lifters, especially lighter weight lifters or women, they tend to bring their hands very close. What's this for? That's just to allow my arms to be close, so when I get under the bar, my upper back is nice and tight together, and then I pull it down just like our bar positioning, low bar or high bar. The other big thing is going to be where my elbows and my hands are. There's a few different grips I can take. Typically speaking, we want the weight of the bar to be on our back and not into our wrists. If I'm squatting and I feel a lot of wrist discomfort or shoulder discomfort or elbow discomfort, we have an issue there. Your hands might be too close together, or they might be too far apart and you're not getting stable under the bar. Typically, I like to see lifters have a neutral wrist position when squatting. So whatever grip they take, I want their wrist to be neutral. If they can't do that, like myself, that's fine. Whatever grip they take or whatever grip style they take, it should allow them to keep the weight of the bar on their back and not in their hands. Now, the other thing is going to be head positioning. With my head, I tell lifters to look up. Do we want to crank our neck up too much? No, we don't want to strain our neck, but at the same time, if we're looking down at our ground, everything tends to fold down to the ground. So looking straight ahead and focusing on one pinpoint in front of you tends to be the best strategy in order to keep your upper back, torso in line, nice and stable, and give yourself a point of focus so you don't get distracted while you're lifting. All right, that's the basics of the powerlifting squat. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please visit me at tankstrengthcoaching.com or email me at tankstrengthcoaching@gmail.com. And of course, if you're looking to take your strength to the next level, please email me or go to my website and ask about coaching. I look forward to meeting you and hearing from you guys soon.